College football playoff rankings came out yet again last night. We already kind of reacted to them, but it sort of got me thinking a little bit here. With the way that this top six is situated, we can have a conversation around their path to the playoff, and I think it's all very fair to talk about, if Oregon wins out, do they get in? I think they do. If Washington wins out, do they get in? I think they do. I think that's kind of a conversation we've had for a while now, though. The way that I'm looking at this, all six of these teams control their own destiny. So here's the big question I want to ask here. What's it going to take to win a national title? Forget just getting to the dance. Forget being fourth in inches. I'm trying to go the distance, to quote Aubrey Graham. What's it going to take to win a national title? I want to go through these six teams here right now. First and foremost, though, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. As you can tell, we talk college football every single day. You love ball. We love ball. We talk about it because it's our job and we love it. So we're glad to have you here. So no extra additives, no high fructose corn syrup, as we say here a lot. It's ball and only ball. So make sure you're subscribed, and we appreciate y'all being a part of this. So the committee has Oregon at 6. We've talked about why they're at 6. We don't need to unpack that too much. They're a top 4 caliber team. If they handle business and win out, they will be in the playoff. But how does Oregon win a national title? I think Oregon wins a national championship if they are as good as advertised. Because what I think that means is what we've seen from them on the line of scrimmage has been nothing short of phenomenal. They're top 5 in the country in terms of yards per carry on offense. They're top 10 in the country in terms of yards allowed on the ground per game. And what it's going to take for Oregon to win a national championship, more than likely, means you got to go through a line of scrimmage team like a Georgia, like a Michigan, like an Ohio State. And so I think they have the chops to do that. And we've seen it multiple times where they've looked phenomenal on the line of scrimmage against teams like a Utah. Heck, they looked great on the line of scrimmage against a team like Washington, even though they lost that game. But the question is, how do they stack up when they play one of those elite line of scrimmage teams? I think we've seen them be tremendous. We've seen them be advertised as tremendous, but will they be as good as advertised? That's the big question. Because from where I'm sitting, the way they're advertised is a Big Ten football team in the trenches. I don't think that's false advertising, just so we're clear. And then you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Bo Nix, who may end up winning the Heisman Trophy. So for them, just be as good as advertised. I think that's how Oregon gets it done. My worry for them now, when it comes to what could keep it from a college football national championship in that playoff, how does their secondary match up if they run into Washington yet again? Now, we'll probably see that when it comes to the Pac-12 championship game, so maybe this is sort of a moot point as a whole. But the secondary playing one of those elite perimeter teams, if they ran into Ohio State and had to play Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze yet again in that Pac-12 title spot, I wonder how Oregon would be able to shape up in that sense. Not that they're bad by any stretch, but just you have to be elite in every facet to win a national title, in my opinion at least, or in most facets to win a national title. That's my question mark for Oregon. Now, number 5, you got Florida State. And, I mean, the whole ranking with them is, I think it's fair. I don't think we're dropping them because of Jordan Travis being hurt, like we said last night. I think Washington and their eye test and their resume now put them ahead of Florida State. So, Florida State, handle business. You're in the dance. Florida State wins a national championship if they can bottle up a little bit of that 2014 Ohio State juice. Because remember, that was a team where it wasn't just the backup quarterback. You went to the backup quarterback in Cardale Jones, 12 gauge himself, and they just had a magical run. And, I mean, he ended up just being the greatest, most pleasant surprise in Ohio State Buckeye history, being the man at quarterback. So, obviously now, Florida State going from Jordan Travis to Tate Rodemaker. He's thrust into action with the injury of their guy, Jordan Travis. Need to be able to not just be serviceable, but be like Cardale Jones good. Now, I'm not saying you have to play the same kind of style Cardale Jones played where you're running around and throwing your body into people, but I am saying the offense has to stay at the same level, if not elevate from where they are right now. Now, a big part of that run for Ohio State, yes, Cardale Jones came in and got buckets. That's all true. But I think the potentially more important part of this for Florida State is Trey Benson, their running back, has to be what Zeke Elliott was to that Ohio State offense. Because remember, I mean, Zeke had like a historic run in that playoff. From the Alabama game to the Oregon game, I believe he was over 200 yards. I want to say in both games, but definitely in the Alabama game. I think it's going to take an effort like that from Trey Benson to lean on him to be able to make this offense more explosive and to kind of have him come into that mode to make them dangerous. Because the question, or I guess the worry, would be the inconsistency we've seen at times from Florida State. The response mechanism, I think, is one of the best in the country. The concern is we've had to see that response mechanism a fair amount. So for Florida State, I really do think there's that blueprint laid out of, okay, your quarterback and your backup quarterback. We've seen it done before. We've seen a backup quarterback come in here and lead a team to a national championship, but a big part of it will take a heavy dose of production in the run game. Now at number 4, you got Washington. And the thing for them, man, like when they get in gear, like all y'all that have played like Super Smash Bros. Or Mario Kart or any of those Nintendo games, when they get that star power going, they're untouchable. When they're in their zone, there is arguably nobody better in the country. Because when they have Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan all healthy and all operating at an elite level, and you have Michael Penix Jr. just dealing the mail like FedEx, like they are in really, really good shape. And the reason why I say that is the way this offense is built, it demands a lot of you physically to execute. But when you're executing, I think it's borderline unstoppable because of how wide those splits are. It creates a lot of one-on-one matchups and how many guys they have that can beat you one-on-one. Rome Odunze, most specifically and probably most emphatically, like when they're in the zone, I think all bets are off. Now, the worry for them would be, okay, well, the offense maybe has a day where they're not 100% on the money, and they've had days like that. Don't get it twisted. We've seen them win ugly, but the concern would be you would have a day like that against an elite level team. So, like, the question for me is, what happens if they play one of those elite game control teams? And I'm talking about an Ohio State, which is what they've been as of late, a Michigan, a Georgia, a team that's just going to say, you know what, we're going to run the football at you. And they're one of the best teams running the football in the country, one of those teams, and they control the game. That would be my concern. Now, again, if they're on, that's their path to a national title. I'm saying it right now. They could win a national title, but it would take something like that in my mind. Now, at 3, you got Michigan. 2 things have to happen for Michigan to win a national title. I got two ifs. The first is if they're still the bully on the block. Okay? Second, if that offense and the next evolution in the passing game is real. So let's start with that first one. Michigan, a season ago, was running for right around 240 yards a game. Like there was no wondering, guessing, thinking, are they not? They were the bully. Period, mic drop, the end. With that kind of rushing number. Now, right now, they're running for 171 yards a game. To be clear, that's still really good. There is a lot of schools across the country that would trade their punt team unit for that kind of rushing number. Okay? But we understand 240 versus 170, that's a pretty big disparity. And it's not a question of can they to me. It's a matter of will they / is that something they can do against elite competition? Okay, so if they're still that bully on the block, that's kind of been their identity and their takeover button, if you will. If they still have that, they're going to be a very difficult out because I think they'll lean into that a little bit more than we saw them do last year. Now, the other part of this, like I said, if the evolution of the pass game that we've seen to this point be effective, if that's real. And I don't mean is it real in terms of can J.J. McCarthy make those throws. I'm asking can they do that consistently in the big spots? Because that was sort of the thought process all off season was, well, if J.J. McCarthy can push the ball downfield a little bit more, like I don't know how you defend Michigan. Because you can't play them with a light box or even an honest box and expect to stop the run and then feel good about what you have behind them if J.J. McCarthy is dealing. And the thing with them right now is like, the reason why I ask if it's real is because we've seen it. Like J.J. McCarthy a season ago in the regular season threw for over 250 yards twice. So far, he's done it 4 times. Okay, so there's a very, very clearly another step, at least philosophically for this offense, to push the ball downfield. But what happens when they play the Ohio States? What happens when they play the Georgias? I'm excited to see it. We'll get to see it this Saturday, but that has to be a reality for them because if they end up being one-dimensional, I don't think you can be one-dimensional against a team like a Georgia. Heck, this weekend, like an Ohio State. I don't think that's something you can have in the cards. So, for Michigan, those are the questions we have, and that's what it's going to take to win a national title. Now, team that we're going to see them play this weekend. Ohio State's at 2. No issue with the ranking here because they're going to figure out that number 2 and number 3 spot there. But what I think it takes for them to win a national title is, I think what most people would say at this point in time, if Kyle McCord can be 10 to 15% more dynamic because he's been really efficient. I think he's done everything that he's been asked to do as the guy at Ohio State. But we're getting to this point in the season where you have to do more than what's asked of you. Because what's asked of you is to play 12 games and to, you know, win every single one of them, but to beat elite level competition, to beat a Michigan, to beat a Georgia, to win a national title, I don't think you can have just a guy who does his job. I think winning the national title requires everyone to do more than just their job. Okay, so when I talk about Kyle McCord, I don't have a ton of extra things to say about Ohio State because the roster itself is built to win a national title. Like, defense has totally reinvented themselves in my mind in regards to being so much more comfortable in this scheme under Jim Knowles. They're allowing, I think if it's not single digits, it's very close to single digit points per game. They might be somewhere in the range of like 10 at this point. Like, they are built to win a national title on the defensive side of the ball. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in college football. If you have a quarterback that can unlock all of that talent on the perimeter to the nth degree, like unlock it to the, you know, boss level, at that point, Ohio State has no weaknesses. So he's got a tremendous stat line right now. I mean, top 10 in QBR, but it's going to take more than just efficiency to beat Georgia from where I'm sitting. Now, speaking of Georgia, we've been extremely high on Georgia all season long. We make no apologies for it. I think they're the best team in the country. I think they've been the best team in the country the last couple of weeks. What I think it's going to take for them to win a national title is, one, staying healthy. We've seen them have some injuries, whether it's Ladd McConkey week in and week out, Brock Bowers just now getting back in the lineup, and you kind of held your breath a little bit when you saw him limping at times against Tennessee. And so that's obviously, you know, the price of admission. But the other part of this is there are some really new pieces for Georgia. Like, they were 80th in the country in terms of returning production coming into this season. And we'll talk about Georgia and the pulse of the program here a little bit later in the show. But we understand now, like, the key for Georgia a season ago, kind of their ace up the sleeve, was they had some really, really elite experience at some really important spots. Like Stetson Bennett, all the jokes made about how long he was in college, make him if you want to. Dude was never, ever flustered or never looked like he wasn't the epitome of composure playing quarterback for them. Same thing with Todd Monken. Like, they had been in those spots together before. Now, new quarterback, new OC. They're somewhere in the range of, I think they're like just over 50% or so return to production from last season. I understand a lot of these guys now have played a lot of ball together. You're expecting the new pieces to not play like new pieces. But in the spots Georgia would have to be in to win a national title, we're talking, obviously, the SEC championship. We're talking college football playoff game. We're talking national title. All three of those, very bright lights, very good competition. Is there any breaking in segment for Georgia when it comes to those kind of games? Because the one knock you probably have on Georgia at this point in time is the slow starts. Like, first play of the game, Tennessee, they're ripping off a big touchdown. Auburn, they give Georgia trouble for the majority of the game. South Carolina, they're up at half. Like, and understand, parts of those were different early in the year. I think it's a different Georgia team than what they were against South Carolina and Auburn. But just so we're all clear, there cannot be any more letdown quarters for Georgia. And I think you're seeing some of that with the new production that is, you know, now present in Athens. But what you didn't have from last year, like, there are guys here I think that are still totally trying to get completely settled, which isn't, you know, wrong. It's not a thing we got to necessarily be super upset at Georgia for, but I am just saying now it is go time. You can't have a letdown quarter against Bama. Can't have a letdown quarter against Ohio State, Michigan, so on and so forth. So for Georgia, that's the big piece for me is, can they stay healthy, and can those new pieces totally settle in and keep from in the letdown quarters? So I'm excited to see it, but that's what's going to take for those top 6 teams to win a national title. To be clear, I think all of them control their own destiny when it comes to their college football playoff aspirations. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.